no, she's done it again. Meghan Markle has just made the judge of Australian MasterChef, a household name, beloved figure in Australia, Poh Ling Yeow, cry during filming.
Meghan Markle is attempting to distract by showing a series of holiday photos, her summer holiday photos, on Instagram, despite reports that she made one of the co-hosts on MasterChef basically cry.
But she bullied people in a very unpleasant way over here.
The moment the cameras weren't supposed to catch, someone crying, someone smiling, and a silence so loud it practically screamed. This is the story they tried to edit out, but the pattern refuses to stay hidden. Right? So here we are again. Another set, another city, another story that starts exactly the same way and somehow always ends with someone walking off shattered, while Meghan Markle walks out untouched, polished, camera ready, like nothing ever happened. The MasterChef Australia episode hadn't even aired yet, and already the whispers were spreading through Sydney like wildfire. Not rumors, patterns, not accidents, repetition. Because when the same kind of story follows the same person across continents, across years, across entirely different rooms full of entirely different people, at what point does coincidence stop being believable? A lovely woman named Poh Ling Yeow, respected, adored, someone who built her name over years, suddenly leaving in tears over a single word. One word. Think about that. And if you've been watching closely, not casually, not blindly, but really watching, you're not shocked anymore. You're counting how many times this exact scene has played out. Meghan Markle walks in, someone ends up crying. Meghan Markle walks out smiling for the cameras. Same script, new location. And somehow, every single time, we're told it's just a misunderstanding. Meghan hated her, that's the whisper. That's the undercurrent no one wants to say out loud, but everyone seems to feel. Because when you line it all up, the crying judge, the cooking show that somehow managed to collapse before it even aired properly, the fashion show moment where laughter slipped out at the worst possible second, it doesn't look random anymore. It looks connected. It looks deliberate. It looks like a pattern that's been quietly building for 8 years, one moment at a time, one person at a time. Here's what really went down, or at least what they didn't want you to notice. Meghan Markle arrives in that MasterChef kitchen back in April, playing the role perfectly. Warm, humble, relatable. The performance was set. The image was clear. But then came the rule. One rule, quietly placed before anything even began. Do not call her royalty. Not once. Not even by accident. The same woman who embraces the Duchess of Sussex title when it suits her, suddenly rejecting the very word that defines it. Why? What changes depending on the room she's in? What version are people supposed to believe? Sydney couldn't work it out. And Poh Ling Yeow, being exactly who she is, kind, genuine, steps in with a compliment. A simple introduction. MasterChef royalty, warm smile, harmless words, but that one word, apparently enough to freeze the entire room. Suddenly, tension. Suddenly, discomfort. Suddenly, the kind of silence that doesn't just sit there. It spreads. The word going around? Meghan Markle's team reacted instantly. A shift behind the scenes. A reaction too sharp for something so small. And Poh Ling Yeow? Mortified. Wanting to fix it. Wanting to apologize. Told not to. And just like that, something changed. And then comes the part that raises the real question. Footage missing. Moments gone. A chunk of what happened simply disappears. When a show edits itself, trims for time, that's normal. But when it removes its own headline guest's behavior, that's not editing, that's damage control, that's cleanup, especially when the challenge of the day was to cook a dish fit for a duchess. Think about that contradiction. Ban the word. Build the theme around it. Control the narrative. Shift the perception. They had contestants sweating over stoves, working under pressure, building dishes around an identity she publicly rejected just an hour before. One rule for them, another for her. And here's the detail that quietly says everything without saying anything at all. The contestants didn't go to Meghan Markle for help. They walked past her, straight to the other judges, the biggest name in the room, treated like background, not authority, not guidance, just presence. So ask the question nobody wants to ask out loud. Why would someone like Poh Ling Yeow, warm, respected, steady, end up in tears standing next to Meghan Markle? What happened in those missing moments? What was said when the cameras weren't supposed to be the focus? Because when you trace it back, when you connect it to every other room, every other set, every other story, it starts to feel less like a single incident and more like a repeating cycle. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the story doesn't stop in that kitchen. It spreads outward. It reaches into other shows, other appearances, other carefully managed moments. It starts to collide with something else entirely. The question of authenticity, the question of skill, the question nobody in Montecito seems eager to answer. Can Meghan Markle actually do what she's presenting herself as an expert in? And that's where the story takes a sharper turn, because once the kitchen moment fades, once the tears are quietly pushed aside, the bigger question refuses to stay buried. If Meghan Markle is positioning herself as a voice of authority in the kitchen, as someone worthy of judging professionals who have spent decades perfecting their craft, then the record should support it. But when people started looking at that record, the response wasn't admiration. It was confusion, then disbelief, then something closer to ridicule. The Netflix cooking show that was meant to anchor that image didn't just underperform, it collapsed completely, landing at a flat 0 from critics. Not low, not mixed, but nothing at all, which in itself becomes a statement louder than any review could ever be. A 0 doesn't just happen. A 0 is earned. And still, the narrative didn't shift. Meghan Markle continued presenting that same version of herself, the cook, the lifestyle authority, the one guiding others, even as viewers began picking apart what they were actually seeing. Because what they saw wasn't expertise, it was presentation. Carefully arranged food, simple gestures dressed up as skill, a performance built on aesthetics rather than substance. And then the comparisons began creeping in, quietly at first, then louder. Martha Stewart, Pamela Anderson, names that carried weight, names that had built something real over time. Suddenly, people weren't just questioning the quality, they were questioning the originality. Because when two separate figures look at something and recognize pieces of their own work, that's no longer coincidence. That becomes a pattern. And what made it more striking was the silence that followed. Not outrage, not confrontation, just silence. And sometimes silence says more than any accusation ever could. But even that isn't the core of what unsettles people. Being inexperienced isn't a crime. Playing a role isn't unusual. What keeps drawing attention back, again and again, is the effect Meghan Markle seems to have on the people around her. Because while the public image stays controlled, polished, untouchable, the stories from behind the scenes keep echoing the same tone. Staff leaving, assistants walking away, reports stacking up quietly in the background, never fully addressed, never fully resolved. The nickname that surfaced early, whispered within palace walls, Duchess Difficult, didn't come from nowhere. It came from experience. It came from repetition. And when formal complaints are written, when professionals with years of service decide it's no longer worth staying, that doesn't just disappear because it's inconvenient. The timeline stretches back further than most people realize. Back to 2018, when Meghan Markle was still new, when everything was supposed to be smooth, controlled, carefully guided, and yet even then, cracks were forming. The widely repeated story about a bridesmaid's dress never quite explained the tension that followed, because what surfaced later pointed somewhere else entirely, toward how Meghan Markle interacted with the people working closest to her. 2 assistants leaving within a year, another stepping in, only to step out just as quickly. Descriptions that didn't sound exaggerated, just exhausted. And even when an internal review was launched, even when the situation was formally acknowledged, the outcome never saw the light of day. Buried, contained, quietly closed, and then the setting changes, but the pattern doesn't. Move from palace corridors to Hollywood offices, from structured environments to creative ones, and still the same stories begin to surface. Words like difficult, words like demanding, words like impossible to please. People who made it through those environments didn't celebrate it, they survived it. They even gave it a name, a survivors club. Think about that choice of word. Survivors, not colleagues, not former staff, survivors. And the most unsettling part isn't any single story, it's the consistency. Across continents, across years, across entirely different industries. The same arc, the same fallout, the same quiet exits. One person might have a misunderstanding, 2 might suggest a clash. But when the list keeps growing, when the pattern refuses to break, it starts to look less like circumstance and more like identity.